Hi guys, Matthew Rory Pilgrim here, back again with some more sword demonstrations based around a certain concept. In this case, I think this might end up following a particular pattern used by essay writers: point, evidence, explain, link. All based on the theme of putting religion separately. That's something that I think so many atheists do. They say that religion is unique in that it is open to interpretation and therefore completely separate from everything else, which is based on hard facts. And because it's based purely on interpretation, it therefore is not grounded and should be not considered central to life. That is simply not the case. Because there are several things that are in fact based on broad interpretations by separate people. That could be human rights, that could be law, or, in this case, swordsmanship. There are several different interpretations of European swordsmanship, even within certain cultures. In German culture, there's the manuals used by Tauhofer and by Joachim Meyer. So you get different interpretations of how to wield a weapon and how to move from one guard position to another, and how your footwork adjusts. And that's not just unique in Germany, it's across Europe. You find in Italian swordsmanship, Flora Battaglia uses certain swordsmanship styles as well. You see them stick fighting with various types of staff fighting across Europe, including the French short stick, the Scottish quarterstaff, English quarterstaff, German quarterstaff, you name it. Take a look, you'll find there's a broad interpretation of how to wield a simple stick. Not even with an edge, just a stick. And there's some people that will train you in different ways. And often, so many people just fail to realise how much that affects how they see the world. And often, people will say that just because they see something in a certain way, that must be the only interpretation. I've just had a conversation with someone online about that very thing. It's the same picture, it's the same image, and yet we interpret it completely differently. He thought I was mad, I thought he was being incredibly pessimistic. I'll put it up on the video so you can see what I'm talking about. It really is quite shocking, if you ask me. But, how does it apply in swordsmanship? Well, strangely enough, there is a case study. Some people say that dual wielding was well known in the ancient world, which it was in a sense. Certainly shields were used more often when dual wielding, because look, a shield is a weapon. Do I have a shield available? Yes, I do. My Viking style round shield. That covers a decent portion of my body. I hold it in what I favour called the pistol grip. Hold it like so, or piston grip. So when someone hits me, I've got a bit more give. It's not pushing back into me, not breaking my arm. And I've still got a bit of support on my hip. There's probably a particularly heavy shield, so I'll probably be using this just as much to strike as to defend. But it's these sort of things that matter, and I might even use a long knife, like this sort of targe. There are so many ways one can use a shield, and it's still a dual-wielding thing, as this will be defending me, whilst I can use my sword to cut a bum, jab over, or even hack at their legs, all whilst being covered. And if I need to defend myself, I can go like so, still being covered, and I'm still throwing out my sword. It's pretty simple, and there are so many ways I can do that just by shooting my grip as well. But one thing people say in Japanese swordsmanship is that one of the greatest fighters of the samurai, who made his own manuals, Miyamoto Musashi, he taught dual-wielding swords. He did, but he carefully made sure that it was a shorter weapon. This is slightly shorter than this hockey stick, but it still demonstrates the point. These are still light and I can still throw cuts with them in the same way, assuming I don't hit anything else. I'm not skilled in dual wielding, as you can clearly see. I'm not skilled in my surroundings. So this is purely for demonstration purposes, not to prove a point in how they're used. Other people who are more skilled will be able to demonstrate better. Since the shorter hockey stick is only minimally smaller, I'm going to demonstrate the dual wielding purposes of a shorter weapon like a knife, with the long sword doing close-up jabs, parries. Even if this gets tangled up in close range, I can use this to come up and under, sometimes even in a reverse grip, nice and close. But that is only when it's nice and close. Let me emphasise that. You can't, in theory you can use it like this, but that will get right in the way of your weapon. It's far better to use it more like this. And when you strike, so you can hold it like so, so many other ways. And hold it, this can be used as a parrying dagger, so you can cut. This can be used to clear aside something, so you can jab in, cut down. So many people will demonstrate other ways of using these weapons. But that is sort of my point. Just because people can doesn't mean you can. And just because you see that people say they can doesn't automatically mean that what you see is the whole story. There's a trigger word for atheists, so trigger warning. Context. The big C. Context, people. Keep it in context. Actually read the source material. You'll be amazed how often that happens in everyday life, not just reading the Bible. In fact, as I mentioned, one of the other things that can be down to interpretation is law. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I've never studied law, even though my great aunt wants me to become a lawyer. That's not going to happen, auntie. But what I can learn from it, what I do know from it, is based entirely on my experience as a taxi driver. You see so many people on the roads doing stupid things, and it's often down to the fact they've misunderstood the laws and the rules of the road. Often people just completely ignore them. But does that mean that the laws no longer apply? Does that mean the whole concept of the law is gone? Just because so many people who claim to follow the law don't, they deliberately misinterpret them, they are uneducated in them, and therefore don't understand the law, or those that actively practice the law become corrupt and do things that are, well, illegal. Does that mean that the law is rubbish and should not be taught? I think you can agree with me, that is just not the case. For those of you who are looking for further education about the law or how the Highway Code can be interpreted, I'd recommend those of you in America follow Audit the Audit, who does all manner of videos based around police interactions and how they pertain to the law and how a judge may interpret it. Those of you in the UK, I'd recommend following the Black Belt Barrister, who does law reviews, teaches you how to understand the law in England and Wales and in part Scotland. He's fantastic at that. I recommend looking him up. He did a fantastic video on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard as well, so check that out. And to understand the rules of the road a bit better, especially here in the UK, I recommend checking out Ashley Neal. He knows his stuff, he knows what he's doing. Check him out. He will tell you a lot more about how the laws of the road can be affected by you and how that, in turn, has failed the public. Swordsmanship is true as well. If you see people doing things in different ways to what you'd expect, based on that, they're doing it wrong, they're doing things badly, but they claim to be doing it via the manuals, or even some people say they're doing it via the manuals, but they're clearly not, and other people are ignoring the manuals entirely. Does that mean the concept of swordsmanship is completely ridiculous? No. And if that's not the case, why is religion any different? It's not. It's amazing what people will judge for just because they don't understand it. Before you can judge, you need to understand. And that is why education is so important. That is why keeping religion in schools is a good idea. I always interpret that to mean that you stop religious education. RE. Now, I'll be honest, I never enjoyed RE at school. I found it ridiculous, I found it boring. Why should I bother? That's because I wasn't understanding what it was there for. It was to help me understand other cultures. And that's helped me an awful lot. In fact, sometimes in the basics of it, like, say, the origin of the Buddha, helps me to disprove some atheists saying that the origin story of the Buddha is remarkably similar to Jesus and stuff like that, when in actual fact it's notably different on several major factors. I've done a video on how those myths are completely different. I'll leave a link in the description if I can remember. But just remember, just because some things seem completely ridiculous, you'll be amazed to see how other things that we actually have to have in our lives, such as law, and how to use weapons, or even how to make food, as my partner will demonstrate at some point. To me tonight, I have no doubt about that. She's an excellent cook. It's those things that are incredibly important to understand. Because if you don't, you'll see them as things that make no sense and therefore should not exist. I don't remember who said it, but it's only Neil deGrasse Tyson who expanded upon it many times. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. If God is part of the universe, doesn't he fall into that self-same category? Just because you don't understand him does not mean he doesn't exist. Remember that, my friends. Stay safe, and God be with you.